includes parts of Newport News, James City County, York County, and all the entire city of Williamsburg. Monty serves on the county's, cities and towns and courts committees in Richmond. And he earns his living by being a senior director at Visa Incorporated, where he focuses on fraud prevention and reducing risks for banks and consumers. He's a lifelong Virginian, born and raised in Farmville, and is a graduate of William & Mary with a degree in government. Prior to being elected in 2013, Monty served as chairman of the Williamsburg Economic Development Authority and currently serves on the Chamber and Tourism Alliance Board, the Historic Triangle Collaborative Economic Diversity Task Force, and the Development Committee of Child Development Resources. He's also an active member of the William & Mary Alumni Association. He resides in Walnut Hill with his wife Pamela, who is a Deputy Compliance Officer at William & Mary, and their two daughters, Taylor Ann and Holly. So I don't know what he does in his spare time, but please give a warm welcome.
Thank you. Hey, thanks very much. I really appreciate you having me. I wish I'd have gotten the memo. I love this club. Golf shirts on the golf course at lunchtime. I'm glad a couple guys showed up with ties, just try to make me feel better. But I'll learn next time. I'll bring my golf shirts. Thanks very much for having me. I thought I'd come in and give you just a quick look at some things that went on during the General Assembly session. Of course, it is finished. This was the 45-day short session, and even next year there'll be a 60-day session where we set up and pass the 2-year biennium budget. In the shorter years, it's a 45-day session. We go back and tweak and hone the budget. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about the budget, and I thought I'd talk a little bit about some things that came out of the Assembly, link it to local, and hopefully leave enough time, because I really want to answer the questions that you have and address the things that you'd like to know. The budget particularly was of great interest. In mid-December, the governor sent us his adjustments for the 2-year budget for just the final year of the budget, and he was working with about $92 million additional dollars. So first and foremost, if you think back to when we passed the first budget, by the time it came, obviously it was a big fight over health care, so we did not agree on a budget. We extended the session. And during that period of time, we realized that the revenue forecasts were about $1.6 billion short. Oops. Yeah, whoops. In this day and age, it's hard to imagine we missed that much. But the revenue calculations, by the time we were back in September, it was another 800. So you're like $2.2 billion short. So everything was cut, everything was dialed back. They had a very difficult year 2 years ago. This year, much easier. Much better when the revenue forecasts are up. You may have seen in the newspaper this month, the revenue forecast was up 10.7% over this month last year, and is running ahead about 7.5% on a whole year over year. And when the anticipated number was 4.7%. So it's a lot better being in Richmond when the numbers are coming in. But just to show you what a big difference, I told you that the governor sent his adjustments mid-December with $92 million of additional monies. By the time we approved that the final budget package, the compromise committee's package at February 28th, we were working with $624 million additional dollars. Now think about that. So in less than a 60, 90-day period, the numbers changed upwards of $500 million, $500 million. So I thought I'd take a quick minute to talk to you about some of the things that were in and were not in there. We're starting to really look at tax credits. Do tax credits work? Where do they work? What do they do? We took about $22 million out of conservation tax credits because we've been putting a lot of money towards conservation easements, but it was a place that we could dial back a little in that the money hadn't been utilized fully. One place we looked were coal tax credits, $19 million. You know, the coal industry's been going downhill for a long time now for a variety of reasons, mechanization as well as some governmental regulation, but they ended up staying in the budget. One that I was glad to see stay that was close was about $6.4 million in long-term care insurance deduction. And I'll get to that in a minute because I want to close with some senior issues that I focus on locally and that we're looking at in the General Assembly. But remember I told you the governor started with $92 million additional money? Well, so that had $1.6 million only for raises for sheriff's deputies. The lowest level sheriff's deputies do not make enough to get them to the poverty level. Stop and think about that. A state employee running and operating your jails not at the poverty level. Fortunately, we were able, with the additional monies, to have a 2% increase in state employees, 2% with some local employees, plus some compression adjustments, if you know, for the folks that are coming in now, making a certain number, raising people's salaries that have been there for 10 and 20 years, and a 1.5% for teachers. That alone was $153 million worth of money. We also took $130 million and put it back in the rainy day fund. Good play, because we had to take a lot of money out of the rainy day fund to balance the budget before. So both of those expenditures alone were more money than the governor thought he had to work with in mid-December, and we approved them at the end of February. So just kind of an interesting thought. We supposedly held K through 12 harmless and didn't take any more money. Remember, we're still funding K through 12 at 2007 levels. So the amount of money that we're putting in K through 12 education has still not recovered back from pre-recession dollars and numbers. Only about $40 million in additional money for higher education. An interesting initiative this year, about $10 million towards trying to take state institutions and universities that have under 70% graduation rate and incent people to transfer there and continue their education. On the one hand, trying to raise the graduation rates on some of those universities, as well as drive an influx of students there to show them the attractiveness of those universities. So those are just some of the budget tweaks that we did this year, and I'm happy to answer any questions along the way about it. Anytime you go to any legislative process, whether it's Richmond or Washington, and by the way, don't let anyone tell you Richmond's like Washington. It's a very different environment. It's a lot less political than you think, than you read in the paper in Richmond, quite frankly. And of course, Washington seems to be driven upon party politics. But any legislative process you go through is very reactive to the news of the day. When Creedeed's son tragically lost his life, all of a sudden the focus and the emphasis was on mental health. And we put $35 million back into mental health. And boy, is it needed. Anybody seen the newspaper, the forum that they had at the Williamsburg Library last night? Boy, the state kind of took it in the teeth. You wouldn't believe the stories that I get in my office, the cries for help. And I have one most immediately, and it just, where do I go? Where do I turn? But that $35 million was less than the $42 million that we had put in the state budget for mental health care after the Cho situation in Virginia Tech, that during the recession had been pulled out to balance the budget. So my point here is mental health and situations like this have to be important to us all the time, not just when we have tragic situations that we're reacting to. But another that we were reacting to was the Hannah Graham situation. So you saw a lot of legislation that said, gee, if this guy's DNA had been in the database, we would have gotten him. So a bill came through, you collect your DNA for any misdemeanor conviction. So I don't think about that for a second. Your neighbor tells you to stop cutting across his yard. You keep cutting across his yard. Neighbor says, you're trespassing. They arrest you for trespassing. It's a misdemeanor. You go to court and say, come on, it's just my crabby old neighbor. I'm just cutting across his yard. Judge says that's trespassing. You're filed with a misdemeanor. Oh, before you go, let me have your DNA. So, fortunately, spend some time with it. Early on, that was the situation. We honed that down to like the top 8 or top 10 most dangerous misdemeanor convictions. So we tweaked and worked through it. We had a legislator that said, I tell you what, sexual assaults on campus, I don't care. I want them reported to a Commonwealth attorney within 24 hours, or you, Mr. Administrator, I'm going to put you under arrest. I'm on the Courts of Justice Criminal Subcommittee. That's the chairman of the Criminal Subcommittee that wanted that. But it's one of the best pieces of legislation that I've seen. He said, here's what I want, and you administrators and staff from colleges, I know you don't want that. This is what my wife does for a living. My wife determines that about this point, anywhere from 50 to 60% of sexual assaults go unreported on campus anyway. So if all of a sudden you knew you had to go to a Commonwealth attorney, they guess that could be upwards of 80%. So we worked with the administrators, with the colleges, and came to some sort of compromise that the anonymity of the victim can be maintained, provided that an organization or a group that includes campus police, that includes the Title IX coordinator, that includes compliance officers, gets together. The victim is anonymous unless the name, Montgomery Mason. Well, we heard that name last week. Oh, we heard that name. And then if there is a threat to the college campus, then it could be forced to be taken to the local police. But remember, most of these things are reported long after the occurrence. Most of these are not going to be prosecutable, be able to be prosecuted in a court of law anyway. But again, we avoided the overreaction and worked together to try to come up with some decent legislation. Ethics, of course, was a hot topic, an issue. That's something extremely hard to wrestle with. You know, look, nobody's calling me up and asking me to go to the Masters. I mean, I love it, but I didn't get into this for gifts. But here's one for you, a close friend of mine. All right, she called me and said, "Hey, Bonnie, I got the VIP box. I got 2 for Thursday at Kings Mill. Can't go. I forgot I had a council meeting. I can't go. Why don't you and Pam go?" Sure, no problem. Well, wait a minute. She works for the city. I work very closely with her in the economic development authority. She's a contributor to my campaign. Is that a gift? Probably, it may be. I called her and said, "Hey, thanks for the offer, but you know, I just don't take anything now because She's like, "Oh yeah, but this is just a friend." So there's the one end. And the other end, we came up with something with those a great idea. Y'all are having a banquet, and you invite me and to bring my wife and come to the banquet. All right? And you want to pay me to go. Widely accepted attended event. There's going to be 250, 300 people there. So you said, "We'll cover your tickets." That's okay. Oh, what else is a widely accepted attended event? The Masters. So you see, there's so many different levels of things that are very difficult to come up with. We took a good next step. We still got a lot of work to do. That's something you're going to hear coming out of Richmond for a long time. I'm happy to answer any questions on it. We've had a lot of very positive economic development announcements. The governor's been on the Virginia Peninsula upwards of 10 or 12 times in the last year and a half. Continental had a phenomenal announcement. I don't know if you even know they exist. They're right outside of the Williamsburg-Newport News Airport. I always say it that way just for fun. They are building fuel injectors. They are doing an $80 million expansion, 500 jobs. The executive from Detroit pulled me aside and he said, "Sir, I know you're excited about the jobs. We're worried about filling. We're worried about finding qualified, competent people to fill the job." So that's an element we're going to work for, and I'll link back to that in just a moment. $100 million expansion of Cannon. Cannon's also working very hard for us to try to expand and get a discount airfare service to the Newport News Williamsburg Airport, so stay tuned. Hopefully we'll have some good news coming down the pike there. Anheuser-Busch stepped up and bought, I think, 60 acres for the Williamsburg battlefield here. He was here, the governor was here last night, the New Yorktown Memorial, the New Yorktown Foundation, and and Copper Fox Distillery. Opening a distillery right here, which the Secretary of Agriculture was here. It's a closed loop process. Buying the grains and all of the supplies from Virginia, making them in Virginia, and exporting and/or using, so completely Virginia company. Very cool stuff. We also work very closely on a lot of veterans initiatives, and the link I'm going to make here is the Continental situation. The V3 program, Virginia Values Veterans, is designed to attract, retain, and keep these qualified, extremely disciplined, highly trained veterans here on the Virginia Peninsula and putting them in our workforce. You know, we love the fact they're from Pennsylvania, but we don't want them necessarily to go back when they decide to get out of the military. So I've gone to places like Continental. I'm working with the Division of Veterans Services, and we're going to bring them down to the Peninsula Chamber and to our chamber up here and have a V3 certified discussion. They've given me a list of 15 or 20 companies that do not participate, that they'd like to participate, and I'm just doing sales calls for them this summer and trying to put together an opportunity for them to talk, because Continental said to me, "Monty, we need machinists." But you know, the Navy's got a ton of machinists, and it means from here to here. What we need is a program, and this may be working with the AIM program at Thomas Nelson Community College, that we say, okay, this is the machinist we need, and you've got these 8 skills, and at the same time, we need you to get these 5. We can put it together, be a V3 certified, hire veterans, and bring them in and have them ready to go to work over at Continental. But this is part of the mindset change. You know, your son or daughter is in high school, a solid student, and Continental wants them to come to work for them. Whoa, I want them to go to college. Continue their education. Well, Continental would like to train them up, put them in a highly technically advanced, sophisticated field, and pay them $65,000 a year. Doesn't mean we can't continue our education at some point. But it's kind of a mindset adjustment that we have to go through to fulfill the workforce of what we're calling the new Virginia economy, the 21st century jobs that we're in need of. There are jobs out there that we cannot fill. So we're working with veterans organizations. We also work with the Veterans Transition Assistance Program, putting people on the basis. Hey, you're getting ready to leave. Are you going to re-up? Okay, good. Good luck. Congratulations. Oh, you're not. What did you do here? Do you know? How can I help link you to a V3 certified company here on the Virginia Peninsula, we hope. So there are a lot of exciting things going on there. And we're just forming a Fort Eustis Community Association, because the work that's being done at Fort Eustis is amazing. It is in the heart of the 93rd District, employs 8,000 people, and almost nobody know all of the amazing work that goes on there. I toured their aircraft, their helicopter maintenance facility. We could have had lunch off the floor of the facility. And they send the trainees into the helicopter, and they go over to a bank of computers, and they give them problems to solve on the fly, real time. All highly mechanized, all highly computerized, all highly technically advanced. You know the least educated person I met that day on Fort Eustis? Me. Everybody had advanced degrees and law degrees, and I'm just kind of an undergrad guy from William and Mary, man. I left there going, boy, I'm not very smart. Finally, one thing that I've worked on very closely as a delegate, and many people have asked me, how did you choose this issue? And I said, I didn't choose this issue chose me. And that is senior issues. By 2020, 25% of the population in Virginia will be over 65. My district today, that number is 32%. Now that's phenomenal. May start with the incredibly positive opportunities there. I mean, the skill set, the things that you've done in your career, the things you bring to the community, the things you bring to your volunteerism. I mean, seniors do an enormous amount for our population, for our community. Now, we tend to lean on them kind of hard as well. Williamsburg Faith in Action is a great example. Seniors working to give people rides to doctor's appointments, to grocery stores, to day-to-day things when they can no longer. Well, that's kind of an intersection of where I see people at Williamsburg Faith in Action then all of a sudden need the help, need the service. Every time I start talking about senior issues, it just spiderwebs. Just went to an event, Williamsburg Faith in Action, had an age in your home, stay in your home as long as you can situation. So there are a variety of things, so think through that one. The ability to care for the home, the ability to keep up with it. Transportation, when all of a sudden you can. How many of you took mass transit to the meeting here today? Oh, that's right, nobody. I never have asked that question and someone raised their hand. But I've worked very closely on transit issues on the Virginia Peninsula because I believe it's an important component to alleviating congestion, and we have to have people be able to get. It's a big deal for employers and for employees and for seniors who just might need to get to the store. It's also a juxtaposition we talk about with mental health. If we had somebody that on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays could go by the house and make sure that Monty took a red, white, and a blue pill on Monday, and a red, white, instead of 3 reds on Monday, 3 blues on Tuesday, and 3 whites on Wednesday, and end up in the hospital on Thursday. So if in a mental health situation, that person can be fully, highly functioning. In a senior situation, that person is doing very well. But we don't have people doing those things. My father is a 79-year-old retired pharmacist. He's a pro. He can't keep up with his medications, and he's a professional. So they're just a variety of things that we need to focus on, and their opportunities. We talked about the opportunities for industry and for businesses and jobs that help seniors, that accentuate their lifestyle and their living, and the role that seniors play in our community is critical. So it's something we've got to keep top of mind. We've got to continue to talk about. I'll close on transportation because I talked about transit. Even though we don't take the bus, I spent the day on the bus down in Newport News. And I met the lady who lives 6 miles away from work and rides the bus for an hour and a half every day. Essentially, she works 10 hours to get paid for 7. Because she has to get up an hour early to meet the bus. Then she spends an hour and a half on the bus. And by the way, she gets to work 45 minutes early because that's the best bus line route that she can get. She didn't complain. This was good for her. But making that system more efficient is important for all of us. You think the shipyard wants to spend more money on parking lots? No, I think they'd like to have a bus come and be able to access the shipyard. And shipyards and bases, you'd think, were ideal places for mass transit. So although, we don't take it, it's important for us to talk about it and it be a component of the transportation process. But The widening of 64 is a crucial issue. I don't know if you saw recent. So phase 1 is already happening. If you go down to Newport News, you'll see signs that say Sunday to Thursday, 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. We're going to be closing a road. So this is phase 1 that gets us through Fort Eustis Boulevard and fixes the interchange there at Fort Eustis. We're in the design build phase. So right now they're tweaking it. You'll start seeing some work now towards the end of the year, but the work will essentially be 16, 17, and 18. We just had the public comment period on design on 2. That takes it from about 1,000 yards past Fort Eustis to right about 500 yards past 199, right there at the Busch Gardens exit. All right, again, if things go swimmingly, this is an aggressive timeline, by the way. If things go swimmingly, the design build will be 2016. You'll start seeing work 2017, 2018, 2019. Here's what I want to leave you with. Talk to your local representatives, your local supervisor. We have to constantly have the conversation. Phase 3 is not yet paid for. It's not on the books. It's in the plan. It's in the plan. But we've got to keep the momentum to get that done. If 3 lanes go to 2 at Busch Gardens, at Eastern or Southern, whichever way you want to look at it, 199 will become a parking lot. Hey, Fred, as a backup, let's take this road. It just goes around Williamsburg. Right. So it's a great sign that Tommy Norman is now on the Hampton Roads Transportation Accountability Commission, because we have got to keep pushing that, because even best case, aggressive timeline, design build 17, build 18, 19, and 20. So this is a great thing for VDOT because it's an aggressive timeline, but I have just described to you 3 phases of widening of 64, 2 out of 3 are paid, that my daughter goes to Matthew Whaley in kindergarten next year. Before we even shed a tear that she goes to kindergarten, we'll be shedding a tear. She'll be out of Matthew Whaley going to middle school before we finish that. That's the way I think. Sorry to, happy to answer any questions that you may have. See, I'm getting the hook. Yes, sir.
Good question.
Yes, sir.
Coming from New Jersey, where they also have low gasoline taxes.
Yes.
But those gasoline taxes are dedicated for transportation purposes.
Right.
And as a consequence, they've had a very successful transportation trust fund.
Right.
Their tax is a fixed amount. It doesn't go down as oil goes down.
Right.
Is there any prospect of correcting that here and making the tax at a level that would be commensurate with the transportation needs?
That's what should have been done.
And that it's not tied into the cost.
But it's tied into the wholesale gas price.
Continue to go down for
You're right.
several more years.
You're right. Well, it's tied here. It's tied in the wholesale gas price. I don't see it being revisited anytime soon. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears on the floor.
Why not?
Political will. I mean,
Let's go for it.
I'm game. I think it was a smart play. But Andy was just talking about tolls. You know, I mean, every other state in the nation has tolls everywhere. We don't have tolls. If there's a third crossing, there'll have to be some element of tolls. But you're right. That was one of the flaws in the transportation package. It was a great thing, but it took the last time the transportation money had been raised in the state of Virginia. I was at William and Mary. Jerry Beliles was governor, 1986. So that just shows you how difficult it is to get it through. But tying it to the wholesale gas price is costing us money right now.
Is the tax dedicated to transportation?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And divided up locally. That's another point about phase 3. We have bonded and put local Hampton Roads money out front first, so we're able to do phase 1 and phase 2. That's the reason that money's out there, and then the state money comes along. We're hopeful that in this phase 3, we'll see some state money out front, and then our money to fill in. But it's a great question. Who else?
One more question, then we'll have to wrap up.
Yeah, and I have a 2 o'clock, but beyond that, I'll be happy to answer any questions afterwards. I'm
Anyone?
sorry I went a little longer.
Just real quickly, it's a real joy to hear you talk articulately.
My mother's an English teacher. She'd appreciate it.
Well, about what's happening in the General Assembly and all the intricacies that work. What kind of resistance are you getting from the no people who say no to everything?
The House of Delegates is very one-sided. And that is not a day-to-day struggle. It tends to be very regional. It's urban versus rural. It's Central Virginia against Southside Virginia. It's all of Virginia against Northern Virginia. It's like lakes. We had a bill for 2 years in a row that if you had big lakes in your area, you voted one way, and if you had the York River and the James River and the Chesapeake Bay, you voted this way. So it doesn't tend to be that, but this year, in an election year, we saw very rigid. The day Eric Klanner got beat, we went to Richmond. He lost on Tuesday. We went to Richmond that Thursday. The whole tenor of the House of Delegates changed. Because all of a sudden, he was challenged from the right, he was beaten from the right, and anything that opened somebody up to that challenge became a very rigid stop. That's the point about taxing transportation. It should have been done differently. That was a compromise that had been made, but the Speaker of the House is being challenged from the right. I have great admiration and respect for the Speaker of the House. He's a good man. He and I vote very differently on a lot of things. But the fact that there's any human being right of the Speaker of the House is shocking. And yet he's being challenged. He's being called a tax and spend liberal. Trust me when I say he ain't. So it just tends to be, there's not that rigid ideology so much in Richmond, except on a core group of issues, and that's where you get the rigidity.
Nothing's changed in 50 years.
No, sir.
From that perspective.
The answer to your question is, and every college group I speak to, I say, where are you on nonpartisan redistricting? And if you don't have a position, you better get one now, because it will impact the rest of your life. Equal opportunity offenders. When I grew up, the Democrats did it, and now the Republicans do it. So it doesn't matter which party. It's not an R or D issue. It's the party in power. But I have a fair district. So I got a fight on my hands coming up. That's good. I welcome that. Because you have to be in tune with the issues. You have to understand them. And you have to get out and do the work. One of our other reps in the area spending a month in Florida. Because that district is 60%. My seatmate is leaving. I'm so bummed. He's an incredible delegate. He's leaving for business interests. His district's 60%. That election is decided on June 9th in the Democratic primary in Northern Virginia. That's not right. We have a delegate on the peninsula who's retiring. Right now, there's one person seeking the seat. It's a 60% district. That's not right. That's not democracy. That's not getting the best and the brightest. What you think of my political positioning, that we can debate that. But doing the work and doing the job and understanding the issues, you get a lot more of that if you have fair districts and fair races. Thank you very much.
On behalf of our club, certificate to hang on your office wall, and present you with this book.
Nice. A new book to read my daughters.
No, actually,
Oh, darn it. I'm donating it to Genevieve. Hey, she'll come check it out.
a plaque will go in here commemorating this book to you.
Awesome.
And Children's Library.
That's excellent. I'll send my child up to one. Thank you very much.
Could you smile, Neil?
Thank you. I appreciate y'all having me here.